So it should come as no surprise by now that Gary Lineker loves to virtue signal. But it seems though, it'd be one thing if Gary Lineker virtue signaled and he really truly believed what he was saying. But it seems that he only really virtue signals when it's convenient, when it's the cool thing. It's you're part of the in crowd when you virtue signal. Gary Lineker pocketed a whopping 1.6 million. He got paid 400,000 a year working for Al Jazeera, and that's the Qatari-state broadcaster. And this is when he fronted the Champions League coverage over 4 years. And with this, the last deal that Gary Lineker had, it was with the Doha-based broadcaster. This was signed in August 2012. And this was 20 months after the controversial decision to hand Qatar the World Cup. So, with this stuff with Lineker, the virtue signal, it's gone on and on and on with all this stuff. All the stuff at having to go at the Tories, having to go, saying that Israel should be banned from international football, all this other stuff that he does, just typical Lineker. But when this came out about that Qatar was going to host the World Cup, so we're talking, this would have been like late 2010 time, right? And there was a little bit of backlash at the time, right? I don't think there would be the backlash like there is today, but there was a little bit of a backlash with that, I do remember. But it didn't seem to be all these people who were going on and making out like, oh, like we're so ashamed that the World Cup's here and we're gonna be going over there to do the coverage for it. It's like they weren't saying shit back then. Gary Lineker wasn't saying shit back then, was he? And then obviously you had David Beckham, who was like the front man for the whole campaign. And David Beckham, even though supposedly an ally of the LGBTQ whatever community, he didn't mind taking the Qatar money. That should come as no surprise. David Beckham has no problem doing silly adverts with Bill Gates and all this other shit where where he's in with that crowd of the quote unquote elite. But with Lineker though, he had no problem taking that money. He had no problem taking the Qatari money. With this, it emerged that he was paid 400,000 a year, 4 years from 2009 to 2013 by Al Jazeera, and that's owned by the Qatari-state. And his contracts all included, at a minimum, 5-star hotel. Or bare minimum. Got to be a 5-star, right? By the very best, he probably wanted a 7-star hotel, right? And first class flights if necessary. And he is also said to have insisted on a 1-week holiday each February to allow for his traditional trip to Barbados. And his last deal with the Doha basically, as I said, that was August 2012 was his last deal with them. And the paperwork, so that was signed by, it was actually either signed by him or it was his agent. His agent's a man by the name of Jon Holmes. And there were specific clauses in this, right? Specific clauses. Clauses in which Lineker was promised to use his best endeavours to promote, develop, and expand the business of the first party, the broadcaster, Al Jazeera, and its interests generally. So he had no problem, again, Qatar-based broadcaster, Qatar's hosting the World Cup, was going to host it in 2022. I'm guessing he felt a certain way about it because he was virtue signaling at the very beginning and we didn't even see the opening ceremony, But he had no problem though, and in the contract it said he would promote it, So what was he not going to promote it? And then if he wasn't going to do that, risk with the breach of the contract, but again he had no problem taking the money though. Had no problem taking the money. I guess everybody's got a price, huh? But it says, though, the contracts are between Al Jazeera Limited, known as beIN Sports, and Lineker's Derby-based firm All Jazz Limited. That was closed down in 2016 following his divorce from Danielle Bucks. He presented the Champions League coverage 2 nights a week during the competition for Al Jazeera Sport from its London studio. And the thing with all this, I mean, I'm bringing this stuff up. I mean, yeah, with Lineker, this news actually came out late. It was last year, around November of last year, around the time the World Cup was going on. Um, but with this stuff with Lineker, because he's still in the news, all this stuff with, the whole thing about, could BBC let him go over the comments about Israel being banned from international football. But I saw a tweet where he had tweeted somebody yesterday saying, I've temporarily unblocked you to let you know that your tweet is libelous. I didn't take a penny, a pound, a real, or anything else from Qatar for the World Cup. I work for the BBC and the BBC alone. I suggest you delete your inflammatory lies immediately. So he's threatening a lawsuit there, I guess, because somebody probably said that that flat out Gary Lineker had no problem taking Qatar money. But the thing is, though, and someone rightly pointed out on Twitter, they said, Gary Lineker is using semantics to shut down any criticism of his selective outrage over the Middle East and Israel. He took 400 grand a year for 4 years to front Champions League coverage for Al Jazeera, owned by the Qatari-state, and he was silent on October 7th. Yeah, that was, he was very convenient with that silence with what Hamas did on October 7th. But he had no problem taking the money. In the contracts, he was very specific. He needs a bare minimum 5-star hotel, first class flights. He can't be going on economy with the commoners, us commoners, right? And it stated, and his agent or himself ever signed off that he would help promote. It was going to be promoting Al Jazeera, promoting the network. I don't know how far that would go. What exactly all that promotion entailed, if it was just retweeting videos from their Twitter channel at the time, Twitter account at the time, I don't know. But he had no problem doing business with them. He had no problem doing business with Al Jazeera, owned by the Qatari-state, and the country that was going to be hosting the World Cup, that is this horrible country with their human rights record and this, that, the other. And yeah, there is a lot of horrible stuff that goes on in Qatar and what happened. And all the people that died, all the people when it came to building these stadiums, people who died. But the thing is the West really in a place to be lecturing other countries on what to do? Are we really in a place, with what happened in 2003 with the Iraq War? Is the UK, USA for that matter, are we in a place to lecture other countries on what to do, how they go about their life? I don't think we are. And it's just a virtue signal, and it's just laughable, really, isn't it? It was just the way Lineker at the start, right? We didn't get to see the opening ceremony on TV of the World Cup. And it was just the way he was coming off like he was begrudgingly over there to host the World Cup. But it's like no one put a gun to your head, mate. You didn't have to do it. You didn't have to host it, Alex Scott didn't have to go to there or host it, but she thought she was being so radical by wearing the rainbow armband over there. It's like, you fuckers didn't have to go over there. It wasn't Alex Scott that had no problem posing a picture with Putin back in 2018 with the World Cup in Russia. This is that was her first experience as a pundit, was 2018 World Cup, I believe. But she had no problem posing with Putin back then. Again, these fuckers, they only virtue signal when it's convenient. When it's fucking convenient. There were people who I know personally. Yes. They'll know who they are. There were people there I know who went to Qatar, but they were virtue signaling on social media about how terrible things were there and what have you, and again, they're total hypocrites. They still went there. They still, I've got to go there to the World Cup. But again, if you felt so strongly about the country that were hosting it and the stuff that goes on there, then don't go in the first place. At the end of the day, there's some people that, like, it's in wrestling as well when they have events in Saudi Arabia. There's people that won't go there on principle. There was a few talent that didn't go after the whole thing of the whole thing about, the Saudis, what was it, the ordering the killing of the journalist or whatever, and there was talent that didn't go. They had their principles and they decided I'm going to stick to them. Well, you should have stuck to them then. all you fuckers that went over there, but make it out as if it pained you to be doing it, the hosting the show, and it was like such a miserable, kind of almost sad occasion. But no one forced you to get on that plane to go over Qatar. You could have stayed in a nice, fancy, whatever, 3 million pad in London or whatever the hell you were doing, Lineker. Whatever the hell else you would have done, Lineker. But you had no problem taking the Qatar money because you're a fucking hypocrite. Nothing's there. Nothing's there. Morally, spiritually, emotionally. Nothing's there with you. And it was a big. I mean, you know what? All these fuckers that you got to stand by you with the whole comments about, what the Tories said was like rhetoric from 1930s Germany. I mean, oh yeah. It was just all about free speech, he was made out to be a martyr for free speech, and everybody stood by him and that weren't going to go to work, if he wasn't going to be on the show. And it was just ridiculous, It was just ridiculous. Where were all these people, right? Here's a good one. When people got sacked because they weren't going to take the JAB in certain lines of work, and they got sacked, the people who did, okay, let's say they did take the jab, why didn't they stand with the people that got sacked? Because they refused. They said, it's my choice. I don't want to be forced. I don't want to be coerced into doing it. Why didn't they stand by them? Why didn't they bloody refuse to go into work? But this little twit who virtue signals, and we're standing for him. He's a champion of free speech. Lineker is not a champion of free speech, trust me. I mean, he's very much a champion socialist, right? I know the type. They pretend to care a little about the little guy, but in the end, they are motivated by money, and they want to line their pockets, and they will sell out on what, the principles that they like to make out as if they have, and as soon as somebody comes along with a bag of money and says, here you go, if you do this, at the snap of their fingers they're going to take it, and this fucker, just get rid of him from Match of the Day. Just get rid of him. Set an example. And I'm no fan of the BBC, but he's been dicking them around for quite some time now. And I said him at an old video of mine, he's flexing. He's fucking flexing. He's saying, hey, I can say whatever the hell I want, and I can get away with it. And he thrives on that a bit, I think. He thrives on knowing he can get away with saying a lot of things that other people wouldn't, And I think you have to kind of make an example of somebody like that gets to steal a line from Stormzy, too big for their boots. And, he's not... I mean, really, this fucker's irreplaceable. This fucker's gonna... Is he going to go down as the greatest presenter of all time? He'll probably get knighted. But, you can... I would take Jermaine Genius over Gary Lineker at this stage. Honestly, I would, because it's just... They have their little cliques, and you know how it is. They have their little separate shows outside. They do their podcasts. They do their little things. And it is that thing of like a clique. And you've got to try and get into that group. For a lot of these guys that are maybe footballers coming out at the end, and they maybe like to stay in the game and do punditry, it's probably hard because you've got the same fuckers who are in there. Like the gatekeepers, I call them. And when you've got idiots there, and again, I feel bad for Matt Letizia for the shit he went through. But he was like one of the only few that had the balls to speak up, Roy Keane was a good one, you think he would, but he never, with the whole Convid stuff. And when you get an idiot like Jimmy Carragher that says last season when Haaland's banging them in all the time the goals for Man City, Haaland's scoring for fun, that this wasn't the best team for Haaland. It's like laughable and ridiculous, the shit that these guys come out with. And it's the bias there, the Man U bias with Carragher, even the anti-Liverpool bias with Gary Neville. It's ridiculous. But again, these guys, more money than brains, and you've got, in Lineker and BBC, a smug, fake, virtue signaling little twerp, that maybe, I don't know, maybe karma's coming to collect. Joey Barton said he had a few things about he going back to like a spat he had with Lineker 10 or so years ago. He said that maybe Lineker had some skeletons in his closet, and I don't know, maybe when he does his he starts his podcast on Meta or whatever, maybe he could maybe divulge a little bit and maybe give us some clues. It would be interesting to hear if he's got any stories or has any dirt on Lineker. But I just hope they're done away with him, because it's good to see, like, when fake people get what's coming to them and they get put in their place. But those are my thoughts on that, guys. I thought I'd just get this off my chest, a bit of a rant, because he's a bit of a prick, is he, Lineker? But those are my thoughts on all that stuff about Lineker, and just let me know what your thoughts are on Lineker and what you think about all the stuff, all the crap he's been saying. But thanks anyway, guys. See ya.